let's get into it. Soul Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. Man, this episode is one of those things that's near and dear to me as somebody who is about to be a father and someone who never had their father. You know, I was listening to this MMA show that Rogan just did with a gentleman named Joe, let me say it right, Joe Fyre, P-Y-F-R-E. And he just tells this very, very rough story about the abuse that he endured from his father growing up. Stuff like this is very near and dear to me. I just wanted to touch on this because, again, I say it all the time, never discredit the MMA shows. They're going to be heavy focused on MMA, of course, but they go down some paths, and a fighter is just like anybody. They have a past, they have a story, they have a journey, and usually these guys' journeys are quite rough. And this guy's no exception. Don't forget about IamCoachColin.com. We got Soul Not For Sale. We got George Orwell Was Right. We got Public Enemy #1 and much more. Discount code is IamCoachColin. All capital letters, all one word. 1 L in the name Colin. Let's get to this.
You've heard so many stories, so many crazy things. And, you know, my story is definitely not up there with the crazy things, right? But my story, I'm unique. I'm one of one. So my story is, you know, I started out, the abuse started when I was a year old. My parents both blame each other, you know, child services in and out of our lives. I'm one of 5 kids. I got 4 sisters, 2 older, 2 younger. And, I started getting beat as a 1-year-old. From what I was told is because I shit myself, right? It's what infants do. And so that's when it started. And
wow, you got beat for going to the bathroom?
Shit in my diaper, yeah. The story is I shit my diaper, reached in my diaper, wiped on the walls, and then I got beat for it. Neither parent owns up to it, but both parents have blamed each other. Just because of the physical abuse on my father's side, 100% has to be him. My mom was not physically aggressive by nature, you know what I mean? She definitely whipped my ass, you know, a good amount, but it was never with the mean intentions, you know, comparable to my father. It was more verbal on her end, but yeah, so it started then, and bro, since the time I've had memory, I remember getting my head stomped, getting beat, getting screamed at, slapped, humiliated, just run down, told you're never going to be anything, and you know, my sisters unfortunately received the same treatment, and yeah, so I mean, abuse has been something, and toxic, and I mean toxic. Like when I want to say like breaking somebody down, I didn't have an ounce of self-esteem. I was my dad's puppet. I didn't know no life. Being homeschooled, you do school, right?
Is he still around?
Still living, yeah, still living. I'm not sure where. I've parted ways with him, and I don't want to talk to him. Next time I see him is probably, you know, when it's done. And I don't hate him, you know what I mean? I don't hate him, but I despise him as a human being as far as, you know, what he's given back to the world and the kind of person that he's accepted to be. But yeah, I mean, yeah, he's still around. I just don't know where, and I don't really care where. So I know my mom still lives at the house that I grew up in. And
it's so hard to believe that some people are capable of becoming what they become, you know, and to do that to their child.
You know what's fucked up about it the most is that it was almost better for me to have never known him than to know him and see how it went and lose him. You know what I mean? Because I loved that man as a child. That was my idol. Nobody could beat him in the gym. Like that's what I thought. And I never thought he was a liar, you know, and then right around 15 years old, and I definitely think I was behind, you know what I mean, socially. Just because of being homeschooled. So my dad wound up getting Social Security disability, and he was a stay-at-home dad. You know what I mean? Collecting SSD and fucking doing nothing but beating his kids and screaming and sitting, basically just being, you know, a child abuser to all of us. You know, and never once has he ever taken accountability for the wrongs that he's done. And if he's tried to finagle it, it's been to be like, hey, you were a bad kid. And it's like, yo, I want to know how I was a bad kid. I didn't steal. Sure, I lied as a kid out of fear because I was afraid to get my head stomped or get beat like a man. You know, I didn't get a traditional ass whooping, Joe. Like neither of my sisters either. They got picked up by their necks, picked up by their hair, strangled. You know, and there's many stories. You know, and as you know, we have a documentary, right? Yeah. And I refrained from putting the details of specific stories because the documentary is not about woe is me, poor me. It's about I never, through all of this, gave up on the dream to get to the UFC. Even when I broke my arm and I thought I did everything right. I didn't go out and party. I didn't go out and do drugs. I've never smoked weed. I've never done, and I'm not saying weed's a drug, but I've never smoked weed. I've never smoked a cigarette. I've never popped a pill. I've never done anything. I didn't go out to strip clubs. I didn't go out and bring girls home from the bar. That's never been me. So, yeah, I mean.
You were just always focused.
I was obsessed with this. I was obsessed with this. And I was obsessed with this because I knew if I couldn't do this, I would have checked out. And that's what made me, that's what made me like, keep going, motherfucker, keep going, keep going, keep going. And I just kept beating down the door of people like my coach that, has come with me. I've known that man since I was 10 years old, and he's seen me in the gym, and nothing's changed. He could tell you that from, the only thing that's changed is my maturity, the way I look at life, perspective. But yeah, man, I mean, it was a rough background, and it only got worse as I got older.
It's a horrible thing to hear. As a parent, it's terrifying to think that another parent could do that to their child, but we all know it's true. And we all know that it can do one of two things to someone. It could just ruin your life, or it can give you this unstoppable fuel. And that's what it seems to have done with you. I would never wish that on anybody. But I often see people like you that are so fucking driven and so angry in there and so effective because of that, like so dangerous because of that. I often wonder, like, is it even possible to make a guy like you without that?
I don't think so.
I look at like Mike Tyson, same thing.
I don't think so. But I think that's where I have my appreciation for him. I'll never discredit him. I would not be in the sport if it wasn't for him. He was the one that went to the gym. He's the one that introduced me, and I will give respect where it's due, right? And that's the respect.
Was he a fighter?
He grew up in Kensington, Philadelphia. I don't know how well you know Philadelphia. Shithole. Bad parents. Mom apparently was, borderline. I don't know if she was a prostitute or whatever, but he was he was passed home to home. He was always passed back and forth to his parents. So he lived a much rougher life than me. He got jumped all the time. Back then, it was, a very segregated type, you don't come into this part of Philly and you don't cross this part of Philly. And so he would get jumped all the time. I think he was like a timid, like skinny, nerdy, malnutritioned child growing up. So I knew his dad, my grandpa, who I've met a handful of times, was in the Vietnam War. But then when he came back, apparently my dad's story is that he used to sell drugs all the time and was always high, and like that's the story he painted to us. So in my eyes, like, we never knew him really, other than a handful of times we met him because they were bad people and he despised them, and he always held like the craziest anger towards his family. Like, they all blackballed him. He was the black sheep. So yeah, I mean, he grew up rough too, but yeah, I mean, he boxed apparently for a long time. He used to tell everybody he was 115-4. You can't fucking find the guy's records anywhere. It's 100% bullshit. Dude's a fucking storyteller, but he could box. You know what I mean? Even if he didn't fight, he could box. He would do well against guys that were pro boxers or fight guys that were in the gym. My dad was a tough dude. He was good. But definitely always lied for his convenience, for his story. And as he was learning jiu-jitsu with a guy named Steve Hegg, who wound up owning Fight Factory, who taught me jiu-jitsu, alongside with my dad, but that's how I got into it. So I owe him a thanks for the tools that he gave me for the house I have gone to build. That's how I see it. You know what I mean? I don't think he ever intended to give me these tools and me go and fucking build a house with it. And I think he despises me for it. I mean, he's one of the guys, when I broke my arm, sends a message, face down, ass up, just how you like it. You'll never. I told you. Oh, yeah, bro. He said a lot of shit, man. He has said a lot of shit. And don't get me wrong, I've said a lot of shit back. Like we've argued. You know what I mean? He brings that special rage where I would like lose my life or his life over it. You know what I mean? Like, I have to separate myself from him.
Jesus Christ.
So yeah, I mean, but yeah, there's no holds bar when it comes to that guy. The way he manipulates, the way he lies, the way he has basically hurt every single person. He has no long lasting friendships in his life. There's a reason for that,
Yeah.
Holy man, I got another small clip. That is rough. That is rough. Man, I'm gonna cry this episode. Man, it's so. You know what the thing is? I'm gonna play this other clip really quick. You never.
Apartment.
No one.
You know what I mean?
Oh, sorry. No one ever thinks that they're gonna be that kind of dad. No one ever thinks in their head, the kind of dad I'm going to be is the kind of dad that does things like that to my kid, to a baby, to a little kid, to a teenager. You never think that. And there's no instruction manual to being a dad. Hopefully you're just fortunate enough to have a good dad and he just passes on the wisdom and, his dad before him. But nobody ever thinks that they're going to turn into that. And I would love to know, I don't think I'm going to be that. I pray and I fight to not be like that. That was my conditioning from not having a dad around, but I wish I knew for sure how to stop that from happening. 'Cause that's just vile, man. That's so shitty. So shitty. So shitty. Let me just play this other clip. It's just like another minute here.
His girl at the time, which she's married to now, and her 2 daughters, we all lived in a 2-bedroom apartment.
Oof.
You know what I mean? So it was like, it was just like it was a terrible living situation. And then at the beatings, man, I swear to God, he used to beat me up just to prove that he could beat me. You know, and show his girl that he was tough, and he, you know, like nobody could fuck with him type of deal. And it was just like, man, so it got real dark, man, and started like stomping me, broke my teeth. I had two crowns, you know, because of him, because of breaking my teeth. And I would curl up, like he would punch me like a grown man, but I would curl up. He would throw uppercuts, like that's how intent this guy was on getting me. And the last fight we had, it was over a fucking game called Uncharted 3. And we were playing co-op, but because I would get more kills than him, this is the kind of shit he would rage at. And mind you, throughout all these years, right, he's on SSD. The reason being, he had a car accident. He was an oil truck driver. I forget the story of who blew the light, but when he was going through the light, he got T-boned, or he T-boned somebody, blew out his back, had to get surgery. Apparently it failed. Whenever he wanted to jump up and whoop your ass, though, dude wasn't crippled no more. So it's...
Oh, man. Uppercuts. That's crazy. So crazy. But yeah, just going back to that conversation, I don't know how you become like that, man. Like if one of my boys was like that, oh man. But yeah, better not to have a dad. Never thought so. I just wrote down some points beforehand. I had a friend who would say this to me all the time because his dad wasn't that great. And as I get older and I hear things like that, I kind of realize, I guess he's right. Because the way that I would come from it when we would have these arguments was from me never having my dad around and only meeting him like a handful, maybe like, I don't know, maybe my memory's lapsing. I feel like I've never met him more than like 15 times. Pretty sure. Maybe more, I'm not sure. Feels like 15 times. And definitely like 4 times in my adulthood, and that was it. And then one of them was like his deathbed, so it was like, but never having a dad around, I was always like, anything would be better than that. And I guess it's just kind of, you know, the hardest thing you've been through is the hardest thing for you. So for me, it was like, oh man, that's the worst thing, 100%. Like, even if I had a bad dad around. But when you hear how bad it can get, you're like, oh man, like, never mind. Because at least in my mind, I can, you know, and other people who have the same thing as me, you know, have your dad around, you can like make up a story. As bad as it sounds, you can blame your mom and, you know, you can say, oh, well, mom and dad don't get along and that's why I've never seen them. You can just make up so many different things. But if he's there and he's terrible, there's nothing you can make up. You know, you just kind of have to confront it as it is. There's no story that you can put together because, you know, the story's unfolding in front of you, to you, you know? So wild. I definitely, I owe that friend an apology. I've had that argument with a couple of friends who feel like their dads are bad because I'm always like, you know, he could just leave. But it's like, you hear that and you're like, oh God, I wish this guy got away from his dad. His dad's terrible. Such an important thing, man. Such an important thing, fatherhood. So important. Is it necessary? I don't think so. Is it necessary? Joe's talking about, you know, does someone like him come along if he had a better upbringing? And I don't think it's necessary for that to happen. Like, you know, I used to do interviews back in the day, you know, when I was moving around place to place. I would do these interviews, and one of the things I would always ask artists, I would say, do you think a traumatic event is necessary in an artist's life to bring about greatness, you know, great art? And I used to have the mindset of, yes, that is necessary. But I kind of feel like, you know, when I have a son, I don't want to say if, you know, no if, when I have a son, I feel like you can condition him enough that he becomes a stellar man. Like, he pushes through and he knows about determination. A great example of that is Cameron Haynes. If you look at Cameron Haynes, I think he has 2 sons, maybe 3, but I'm pretty sure it's 2. One of them's name is Truett. I follow him on Instagram. He took David Goggins' world record for most pull-ups ever done in 24 hours. He took that away from David Goggins. Like, the guy is driven like his dad. You'll see him with bucks and running marathons and all that stuff. And their father's there. And yeah, his father might be hard on him, you know. He's actually really hard on him. He posted something once and he was like, this is what I do. I do 100 of these and I do 100 of these. And that's how I start my workouts. And his dad just commented, that wasn't 100. I was like, oh, Jesus. Cameron Haynes is a beast, man. But yeah, man, when I think of that, I don't think it's necessary. I think you can make your son good being there and being good to him, pushing him, you know? I see it right now with my brother and his son. He's pushing his son into great things. His son's working out, playing hockey and staying fit, has a girlfriend, has a car, has a job, you know, wants to start he's like doing some kind of clothing thing like me. So it's like, you can still be great and have your dad there. I don't think it's necessary. You do hear a lot of the time when people do have these terrible, terrible situations, you do see them push towards some kind of greatness, either for acceptance or to smear it in the face of their parent. You know, it's funny because Joe, both of them are named Joe. Joe the fighter, he says that he didn't think his dad, or his dad probably didn't think he would take these tools and make a house. And I used to think of that same thing when my dad reconnected me in adulthood. And the metaphor I used, it was like you have a plant and you just leave it somewhere and you never water it or anything. And then you see that it grew into this massive plant. You'd be like so shocked, you know? You weren't expecting that. Man, fatherhood, man. What a terrible father. Oh, man. I would hurt someone so bad if I knew they were doing that to a kid. Oh, man. And amazing he can appreciate it. This is something that I try to get people to do in coaching, which is taking resentment and turning it into gratitude, because it's so powerful. Even when you hear him say it, you know, I owe him a thanks. You know, he's doing all these incredible things, and he's doing it despite the terrible upbringing his father put him into, and he's able to be grateful for that. That's a huge thing. You know, I've done that with my own father, and it's so hard to do. I don't expect anybody to hear this and be like, I'll do that. Let me switch up this. It's so hard to do. And there's a whole series of thought processes you have to go through to really get there. And I'm so surprised that this guy, Joe, was able to get there himself. Just, you know, living life. It's tough. You know, I do it with myself because I look back and, you know, I'm going to be a father. And it's so important to me now to be a good dad. It's so important. So yeah, that's kind of because of him. I don't know if I would have made it such an important thing if I didn't have the upbringing I did. Or I should say the absentee father that I did. I don't know if I would make it such a point to be like, this is something I have to do. I have to do well at it. I don't know if I would be like that if he was just around. Maybe I think of fatherhood as like something that just happens, but now I know that it can get messed up really bad. Really, really bad. Oh, man. Episodes like this always get to me, but I think they're so important. People really, you know, through, I don't even know how I get here from this topic, but through the processes of, you know, what you see with the World Economic Forum and, you know, the lefties of the world, they've kind of demonized the nuclear family. They kind of push this idea that fathers aren't necessary, but they're so necessary because they could be so destructive. It could be such a destructive thing if it's done improperly or if it's done haphazardly, or if you just don't care. It can just destroy a person, and every single person makes up a community. So if every father does the right thing, it strengthens a community, like, incredibly. Because then if it's 10 sons that are reared properly, well, then that turns into 10 women getting taken care of. And then, 10 children. And like, let's say each family has 3 kids. It's 30 people who get taken care of. 40 people. It's a community. It's so necessary. They're so necessary. And the fact that they're shown as doofuses when it comes to like TV sitcoms, if that's even a thing anymore, I don't even know. Movies and things like that, they're always made to seem like oafish, Homer Simpson types. Man, it's crazy that we do that to such a sacred part of the community. Motherhood is very important as well, but fatherhood, so important. So important. And again, I can't say to anybody that they should take whatever bad upbringing they had and make that into gratitude. That's something you have to, for me, I do that for myself. It's not a thing I do to let my dad off the hook, or even my mom, because like, every person has their faults. Young people trying to raise kids, it's hard. Yeah. I'm going to find that out. I'm going to find out how hard it is very soon. Very, very soon. It's hard, but you don't appreciate the bad things that have happened to let people off the hook. It's kind of for yourself. It helps strengthen you more than anything. Oh man, this guy. Again, I say it all the time. Don't let these episodes, these MMA shows. Like if you watch the Joe Rogan Experience, I know you're probably like me. You probably see MMA show and you go, next. But I don't do that anymore. I always go in and listen, and it's great. It's great. And if you want to hear it in its entirety, timestamp is 25 minutes, 15 seconds. Second timestamp is 1 hour, 6 minutes. Yeah, it's so important. And it's so shitty to hear somebody go through something like that, man. And, because I don't know anybody who's had a dad that bad, but I know people who feel like their dads are bad. And it just makes me look at it completely different. Like maybe you don't want that guy around if he's not going to do well. That's kind of what my mom did. My mom looked and said, okay, you're just like, I had my dad, and it was like, you're just consistently not in a good place. So just go away. Just go away. It'll be better that way. And that could make you angry as a kid, but it makes me so happy as a man that I didn't have to go through any wild abuse, It's rough. It's rough. Let me know in the comments how you feel about that kind of thing. Let me know in the comments if you're open, and this is not like a coaching thing or anything, but if you're open to looking at what you've gone through as I won't say a good thing, but something that strengthened you, your character, made you more into who you are, But even as I say that, it's like, well, maybe it's like if you take away the abuse, like let's say this guy, he goes through this massive abuse. It's like if you take that all away and then you're like, I don't know, 60% of the person that you are today. It's like maybe that's good too. Like, and you just didn't get abused and punched in the face and stuff. Like that'd be great too. Man, so bad, so bad. I swear I would dummy. Oh man, I would hurt that guy so bad. Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And other than that, I'm out.